And we're back with Arlene Dickinson, one of Canada's top entrepreneurs who's had phenomenal success in many fields, from television to books, consultancy to consumer products. We're going to talk to Arlene about her wine persuasion. So welcome back, Arlene.
Hi, Dally.
All right. So now, how did you start to acquire a taste for good wine? We talked about early experiences, the dark days, but how about as you started to discover better wines? Was there a certain person who introduced you to good wines?
You know, there was actually. There was a fellow who was a friend of mine who started to, when I very early, many years ago, I'm going to go back maybe 15, 20 years ago. And I started to say to him, I don't know how to order a great wine. I'm not sure exactly what I'm doing. I'm always intimidated when I go into the liquor store because I don't want to buy something that's going to be bad. And now he had collected a lot of wines. He was actually the first person I'd ever met who was really a wine collector. And he, at that point in time, I remember this was going back many, many years ago, told me that I should start thinking about the S's. And I said, well, what do you mean the S's? And he said, well, there's Opus and Camus and Dominus.
California guy.
California guy. And then he said, and then you can remember the Chateau Montalinas and the Farnientes. And he gave me, I'm just kind of rattling off, but he was a California guy. But he was actually kind of helping me understand that there were different things to look at. And he had me taste all those wines. And now today those wines are all very expensive. They weren't as expensive back then. Yeah, but they were still a little on the pricey side. And he said, what you do is you buy them and you store them and you keep them, and they appreciate with age. And if nothing else, if they don't go up in cost value, they go up in wine value in terms of taste. So he taught me about that, and he taught me about Persian rugs. And I think the wine habit was a lot cheaper than the Persian rug habit. So thank him for that.
Oh, that's great. Now, you, of course, have launched a brand of wine called Persuasion, along with the kind of luxury products of coffee and chocolate and the skincare. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe you immigrated with your parents when you were very young from South Africa, and they arrived in the country with about $50. Is that correct?
That's absolutely correct.
And do you think that this taste for indulgences, even small indulgences, because we're not talking about a 50-foot yacht here, is in any way related to your beginnings?
That's a very interesting question. I would say that, we grew up very, very poor, and things like having food in the fridge, I joked earlier about the bus and, taking yourself seriously and those things, but this actually does tie back to what I grew up with, because I think, we couldn't afford to take the bus. We walked because the bus was too expensive, and we didn't have food in our fridge. And, when we did buy groceries, it was a big deal in our home because suddenly there was food on the table, and, that was a big deal. And so, yes, I would say that now that I can afford to buy the things that I can afford to buy, I feel really lucky that I can, and I feel very privileged that I can, but I also don't want to have the things that I'm making be unattainable. Now, the wine is a little bit on the pricier side that I've created, but the chocolates and the things that I've got, I hopefully are small indulgences that anybody can afford. They're not things that you want to buy for yourself every day because, nobody does that, but you do want to have things that are high quality and good. And so, yes, I would say that the insight that you provided is that a lot of that does come because in my past I could not have done any of that.
And I think also women tend to look for those small indulgences. Again, I don't want to generalize horribly, but busy lives can't always take off to the Cayman Islands, but you can have an amazing piece of chocolate with cayenne pepper or a great Bordeaux blend, a Cabernet blend. Yeah. Do you think those really attract women? Is your brand for those products more aimed at women than men?
When I created the Persuasion line of products, the wine and the coffee and the chocolate, I did it because I had written this book, and as I kept thinking to myself, what do I like to do when I read? I love to sit down, open a great book, have a nice glass of wine, have some chocolate or drink a cup of coffee, and it really came out of that. And so do I think that women, it resonates more with them? Probably, because it came from a woman's notion. You know, it came from a female perspective of that's what I do. But I can tell you how a lot of men like my chocolate and my coffee and my wine. But I didn't create it with a gender in mind. I created it with the idea in mind that we need to take, you know, sometimes we just need to be good to ourselves. Sometimes we just need a moment. And we don't need to sweat about anyone else, and women do not do that enough. That's something I can say. We're caregivers, and sometimes we don't care for ourselves.
That's true. And so with the, if you were to describe your co-host, Kevin O'Leary, as a wine, what would he be like? We can edit this.
Oh, what would Kevin be like as a wine? It wouldn't be a subtle wine. It would not be subtle.
It'd be a bit tannic, needing to smooth out?
Yes, it might need a little bit. It might need to smooth out a little bit, yes.
Okay, we'll leave that. But back to your comment about the book, which is really interesting because one of my favorite things to do as well is to read and have a glass. But do you think there's any similarities between the narrative arc of a book, which you've just been through in depth in writing your book called Persuasion, and making a wine? The creative process, anything similar there that you see?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, as I said earlier, and I probably characterize it as genuine, authentic, and win-win. It really is about being honest, genuine, authentic, and win-win. And so I think when you're making a great wine, and the arc of that is you want an honest wine. You want something that feels like exactly what it is trying to be. It's not trying to, you know, trick you or fool you. It wants to kind of show up as what it is. You want a wine that's authentic. You don't want it full of stuff that you don't understand, and you want it to know, you want it to be genuine and be what it is. And then you want to, of course, there's a win-win in a bottle of wine because the winery won when you bought it, and you win when you drink.
Everybody's happy.
That's right. But you know, the arc of the story with a wine, yes. When you make a wine, there is this kind of path you go down. There's a journey of a wine, and you do the tastings. You figure out what it is you like. You have to understand enough about what you're tasting to feel and believe that it's going to continue to evolve, because wines evolve with time, just like stories change and grow bigger with time. And then when you actually, there really is no end to the wine story. That's what I love about it. Every time I open a bottle of my wine, it's a 2010 blend, and when I open it in now, I think, gee, it's changing so much, and it's growing and it's maturing and it's fantastic, just like a good story, right?
Excellent. Wow. Way to tie them together. So, I mean, several studies have said that women buy 80% of wine because we're tend to be the household purchasers of a lot of things, from shreddies to SUVs, plan the dinners, and also the social gatherings. Do you think women buy wine in a different way from men in terms of what we look for? I don't know the stats on that. I don't know what we would be looking for. I think we may be more attracted to the beauty of the bottle and the beauty of the label. That actually, I think, is meaningful, or the interest of it. And I'm not saying we're fooled by it. I think it's just, it adds to it. It's like looking at a beautiful home that's well decorated. You could love the home, but if it's well decorated, that's a big plus, right? So probably a little bit of that goes on. But I don't know. That will be an interesting thing to find out. I'm gonna do some investigation on that. Do you know the answer? No, market research, though. It's a great.
Yeah.
Should get an agency to look into that.
I should have done that.
No. And at one point I heard you make in a previous interview was it's different having a financial interest in a company versus a creative interest. Your wine would be one. You didn't make the wine, but you certainly are financially invested in it. What's the difference to you?
There's some things that that you could add value in the manufacturing or the early stage, where your input is going to add significant value in the creation of something. I can't help the winemaker make a better wine. They're either, because they're experts at what they do, but what I can is think creatively about how I want to market that wine. I can think creatively about how I want to be involved with it. I can certainly add on from a marketing perspective what I can do to bring that wine to life in the marketplace. But the actual making of that wine, that's an art and a science, and it's something that I certainly don't know. I just know what tastes good. I don't have any ability to add value in the front end other than that.
Well, I'll drink to that. I think we should both drink to that.
All right,
We're both getting thirsty, I'm sure.
We're both getting thirsty. Oh, look at that. Okay,
here we go.
I got the
product placement.
Lots of bad product placement. That's great.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Got to get the, what do they call it, the beauty shot or whatever.
Try and pour it up here.
Yep. All right. So when you were choosing which wine.
My bad nails, I just saw that I need a manicure.
Back to the wine. When you were choosing which wine to put in a bottle with your brand on it, what did you consider? Why did you go, say, for a Cabernet blend versus, say, Pinot Noir?
I started off, I was going to do a Pinot Noir when I first began, and I wanted to have something that I thought was going to be very accessible. And I also really loved the Cab Merlot blends were becoming more and more popular. And some people are intimidated by Pinots, right? Some people are not as comfortable with the Pinot as they are a blend. So I just felt like the right thing to do to start. It doesn't mean that I'm not going to do a Pinot, because I might.
Oh, wow. How about a dessert? Yeah, cheers.
Yeah,
please,
cheers.
Go for it. I was thinking maybe you could do like a dessert wine called Dragon Ice Wine for when hell freezes over or something. I don't know. You seem to tie into the dragon fiery notion.
Yes. Well, yeah. It's
inevitable.
It's inevitable. I think. Maybe a tequila next time for the dragon side.
That's true. That's far more fiery. There you go.
Yes. No, we're talking about wine.
Yeah, this is beautiful. I really do like it. It is very smooth for a 2010. Mm-hmm. Full body, but not over the top heavy. What do you get when you taste it?
I certainly get there's a black currant, and I think I love the color of it, and I love and it's kind of sweet to me. It's got a nice sweet tannin to me. I love the currants in it. I like it's a little florally, but it's not over the top floral, right?
Right, absolutely. No, it's lovely. One other question I have to ask, because I know you're such a big proponent of Canadian companies. Why didn't you make a wine in Niagara or the Okanagan?
It's a question that I do get asked a lot, and I can tell you that I am looking into actually making a wine up here now. Oh. The reason I bought and I got involved with this company is there's a long story behind it, of which was partly a commitment that I'd made to do this a long time ago. And because I wanted to stick to my commitment, I did it. But I also think that we can't be so protective about everything. We have to think about being global operators, just like the way the Canadian wineries need to sell their products worldwide. They need to also accept that people have varying tastes, and they're going to buy product from around the world. So I'm not going to apologize that it's not a Canadian wine, but I will tell you that I will definitely look to be doing a Canadian wine, and I would like to support a winemaker here that can come up with a great product, and there's lots of them. So I'm excited about it, but it doesn't mean that this is any less because it's not Canadian.
Absolutely, and I'm sure after we post this video, you will be getting a lot more tweets and emails.
I hope so. I do want the Canadian wineries to know that I'm definitely committed to doing something up here as well.
Wow. Who in the wine world do you admire, Arlene? Whether it's a winemaker or a sommelier or anyone, is there someone who comes to mind whom you admire?
I think a single individual, no, but I do. There are a lot of, what I really like are the wineries where they're small boutique wineries where it's kind of an art that's really important to the people that run the winery. So there are a lot of those, and there are many of those in Canada, in fact. But they're, the ones that aren't into the mass production, and not that I don't think they're wonderful. I do think though that these small batch wineries are coming up with little kind of jewels and little pieces of art, and that fascinates me. So I like that a lot. That appeals to me. And I also like the people who kind of left behind their life and said, I'm going to go and buy a winery and followed their dream. And so, there's, whether it's, God, there's so many of them now that have done that in the U.S. And even some people in Canada have done that, right? Where they've bought
Absolutely.
a winery and they've quit their corporate jobs and they're pursuing their dreams. So I admire that too.
Yeah, it seems to be wine is the sunny second refuge of new careers, whether you've been a doctor or a lawyer or, from all walks of life, actually. The interesting stories, which is what makes this business, I think, so fascinating.
It is, and every time you go on like wine tours and you stop in somewhere and you actually talk to the owners, they all have great stories. So I admire that. I love to. We're back to mentorship, right? There's a great story everywhere.
Absolutely. Well, to finish up, if you could have a glass of wine with anyone, living or dead, in history, who would it be and why?
Oh, wow, that's a tough question. I mean, from a personal perspective, if I could have anyone back for a moment in my life, it would be my father. So I would say that I would want to have a glass of wine with my dad.
Would you share this one with him?
Absolutely, absolutely. I think he'd enjoy it.
Oh, that's great. Thank you so much, Arlene. This was a wonderful conversation. I wish you all the best with this. I'll post the links as to where people can buy this wine.
Thank you.
And keep on doing the great work you're doing.
Thank you so much, Natalie.
Okay,
Nice to chat with you.